What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Trev, here today to bring you a One Piece chapter 1031 discussion slash review. If you like what I'm putting down, make sure you rate, comment, subscribe. We're not going to mess around. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so, gotta bring up my notes here, because there's a lot. Oh, there's a lot this chapter. Oh my goodness. Well, anyway. So first we got the cover page, right? So it shows the seconds, right? The right hands of various organizations. You know, we got Rayleigh for Roger, Sabo for Dragon. Um, it's really good to get confirmation that Shiryu is indeed Blackbeard's right hand man, right? A lot of people thought that Burgess was, and I've never really seen it, right? I mean, well, I guess pre time skip, I definitely would have seen it, but Burgess to me seems not really weak, but pretty weak in the grand scheme of things, right? You know, like he got washed by Sabo on like two separate occasions at least. And yeah, he did ultimately end up leading the Blackbeard Pirates to Baltigo, but Shiryu is just such an overwhelming presence, and he seems so much stronger in comparison to pretty much every other member of the 10 Titanic captains, except for maybe Aokiji, if you want to go the route that Aokiji is one of the Titanic captains. So it's really interesting to see, obviously a visual confirmation from Oda that Shiryu is indeed Blackbeard's right hand. And what's really crazy is to see Beppo there, right? Because I don't even know if Beppo's important, you know? Like I feel like he's important because Law is important. Um and we'll see, I suppose. We'll see. Maybe. Um I highly doubt we'll see actually because oh yeah, I just don't think that we're gonna get a killer moment for Beppo. You know how Killer got his moment to support Kid and push him even further. Beppo's not going to get that. Beppo's just not in the same league as any other character on that cover page. And I really am of the opinion that he's only there because Law is important. Because we haven't got anything from Beppo. Not like one good thing. I think we've gotten two lines from him in the entirety of the series. Beppo. Good lord. Anyway, so we're gonna move on to Kid and Law versus Big Mom, right? So, um, first thing to note is that Kid and Law seem exponentially, like significantly wiped after that one attack, that one application of their awakening, right? Law is panting. Law never really loses his cool all that much, so we don't. I don't expect to see him like you panting, but Kid is looking like he's almost dying, right? Kid looks like he's almost done already, and that does not bode well for the fight itself, especially when it comes to what Big Mom's pulling out now. Big Mom is looking ferocious, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So it's very clear that this fight is the end of Big Mom as a world power. That's what it seems, right? Because Oda still has Kid say things like, you know, we're gonna end it here. We're gonna do it, even if it kills us, right? But based on the amount of stamina it took for that one attack, like that one attack took what, 2, 3 seconds, and they're already done, right? They're already gassed, and Big Mom is just pulling out all the stops right here, right now. Um, that being said, I do want to go back a little bit and talk about um, Kid and Law. Specifically, Law kind of fishing for more information on Kid's Jiki Jiki powers, and Kid just being super tight-lipped about it, right? And that totally makes sense, right? Because ultimately, even if they're fighting together, they are rivals and potential enemies. And the same thing can be said for Law and Luffy, which is something that we tend to forget about because Law has been with the crew for so long, right? Because he's been with us for so long, we're just used to seeing him there. And in fact, we may keep seeing him there for the remainder of the series. We don't know. Not that he's going to be a straw hat in an official sense or even a Grand Fleet member, but he might be staying around, especially because Oda has given Law this new motivation, right? Post Kaido of uncovering the true history, which is something we didn't really get spelled out for us until this chapter. So that's really interesting to see, right? We wouldn't really have to establish Law's motivation outside of being Pirate King, right? Because all three of them want to be Pirate King, at least initially when we met Law and Kid on Sabaody. But it seems like we're getting this new motivation for Law to carry him forward and to not have him be in conflict with Luffy. But that's just a theory, right? That's just my observation of like one sentence. Um, but it is good to note with this interaction between Law and Kid that yes, even though they are fighting together, they are technically still enemies. And the same can be said for Law and Luffy. And that really puts into perspective um the time spent with Law doesn't negate that fact. And we could see something in the future between Law and Luffy where they don't quite mesh and they go their separate ways. And the same thing for Kid and Luffy. Um Now we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about Big Mom. Big Mom took damage, genuine damage, right? And according to her, this was the most hurt she's been in decades. And I have to assume that she means God Valley when she says decades, right? Because I feel that if she got into any kind of significant fight over the course of her career as an emperor, it's something that we would have heard about by now. Um, right? Because if an emperor clashes with another emperor, that's something that the government wants to keep from happening at all costs. And I feel like there's been this pretty nice balance of power at the very least between the former Rocks pirates, right? So Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom, because we know that Shanks is the newest of the four to make the original four, right? He only became an emperor 6 years ago, so 4 years before the start of the series, proper. And I can't think of any other fight that could possibly make Big Mom be damaged this much and it not get the world's government the world government's attention. So I assume that she's talking about God Valley. In which case, this is the most hurt that she's been since God Valley. And she acknowledges Kid and Law, right? She says that they're not bad. Again, this is the most that she's been damaged. And now she's going, I assume, to be all out. She's becoming super serious, right? More serious than Twig Mom, right? The slim version of her. Way more serious than that. And that's hunger pang stuff, right? That's the stuff that took out the village of Elbaf, right? That's the stuff that she's known for. To be marked on site for death if she ever goes to Elbath. And that's something that is something to really hold on to, I think, is that I do feel that she's actually going all out now, right? She's giving up her own lifespan, to fight Law and Kid. It's a year of her lifespan, but it is her lifespan. And I don't know if she can store other people's lifespan and add it to her own. I assume she can't, because she specifically calls all of the grunts around souls too weak to power her up. So she has to use her own. And the fact that she is indeed going all out makes me believe that even if she is going all out now, because right there's that shonen stating of like, I will beat you here even if it kills me. I still think that she's going down. I have no clue how they're going to do it, but it does seem like Oda wants them to do it, so I'm very intrigued to see where that fight goes. I really, really am. um I do like how she turned all of the beams that were previously used against her into homies. And I wonder if we're going to see some kind of crowd control move from Law, like like that huge room he did on Punk Hazard, where he cut like half the island into a top half and a bottom half. We'll see. We'll see. Especially since he does have like soul transfers, right? Law has been shown manipulating souls, so I'm really intrigued to see more of both Law and Kid's awakenings, because I assume that Kid can still affect the beams. Everyone's stuck on these beams. I'm not even sure if the beams are going to be part of the fight anymore, but it seems that Big Mom actually has kind of given them even more of an advantage, because not only can Kid now affect the beams, but Law can as well, right? Because now they are enemies. Now they are souls. So actually, the more I think about it, it feels like Big Mom kind of not leveled the playing field, because oh God, look at her, right? Bigger Mom, right? She's massive. She's absolutely massive. I was saying in my reaction video that she seems about as big as we've seen from her introduction. If you remember her introduction, she was huge, huge, and she's never been that huge again. And I know that Kaido was gigantic when we first saw him, but we're at the point where Big Mom seems to actually be on the scale that she was um, at her introduction. When we first saw Pudding, when we first saw her drooling on the floor and her stomach acid melting through the floor, right? So that's really interesting to see. I hope we get more of an explanation of what Bigger Mom actually. I keep calling it Bigger Mom. That's not the actual name, but um, I hope we get to see more of what that actually does. Right? It's really interesting to note that not only is she bigger, but Prometheus is bigger. Hera is bigger. Napoleon is massive. Absolutely massive. And they look amazing. They look absolutely incredible. And this is what I was talking about. This is what I wanted. I wanted Big Mom to show that she's not a joke, to show that she can pull out all the stops and absolutely clean house when she has to. And I'm so glad that Oda's finally putting in the time to show us that Big Mom is an emperor. And this is what it takes to take on an emperor and what it means to be an emperor. I'm so excited for this fight going forward. At first, I thought it was kind of like a side fight, but I'm glad to see that this fight is getting more and more attention. And I think that we're actually going to see this fight being pushed to be sandwiched in between Zoro versus King and Luffy versus Kaido. Maybe even resolved simultaneously with Luffy versus Kaido. Um, I hope we get one of the Emperors down first, but having Law and Kid beat Big Mom might deflate some of the impact of Luffy versus Kaido. So if they get defeated simultaneously, that might actually be better for the overall impact of Luffy beating an emperor, right? Because not only has Luffy beat an emperor, so have Kid Law, and they didn't get to do it first. Um. Anyway, the next section is Yamato, Drake, Apu, and the numbers. And this is where things get a little shaky this chapter. And when I mean like a little shaky, I mean like the tiniest amount, right? Because this chapter was gold. This chapter was gold for not only the Kid and Law versus Big Mom stuff, but a section that we'll get to at the very end. Oh, believe me, we're gonna get to it. No worries, no worries. Um, but when we talk about this section, uh, obviously Kazumbo is still a thing, and it's still forcing people out of their respective points, and it's forcing them down, is what it seems. Um, it is forcing them down towards this basement, right? So not only do we have Yamato moving towards the basement, but we also have Brook and Robin dropping down a floor, right? So when we see Brook and Robin, they are on the second floor, and then Brooke ends up jumping down to the first floor. And we'll get there, but it is interesting to note that this fire is forcing people to move down, right? Or at the very least, it's clearly separating all of the fodder and all of the less important characters. And when I mean less important, I mean uh like least strong characters, right? Into two very distinct tiers. Save for Yamato, of course, right? She's going down, and that's why she's there. But it seems that all of the biggest fights are happening above the Kazumbo's flames, and then or the fights we have left at least, right? And then all of the unresolved issues of Wano are being handled below the flames. So that's really interesting to see. Is this separate? Is this diegetic container for all of the top tier stuff and the lower tier stuff and unresolved issues that need to be resolved? So we have Yamato move into the Iwato chamber, and she briefly clashes with Drake. I mean, like, and then Drake is on the floor, right? Um, and that's interesting to see. But this section is all Apu. He's desperate, very, very desperate to ally himself with anyone, and I mean anyone who can get him away from Kaido with the quickness. I mean, quick, right? So we see him talk to Drake, and I did not think that Drake would say no. But I'm so glad he did because there are a lot of loose ends in Wano that need tying up. And I think to add another layer on top of that would be a mistake. So it's very interesting to see that Drake feels that he has an obligation to Luffy for keeping him on his side, and that they need and that he feels that he needs to beat Apu here. And it's it's just so funny to see that we first thought that Apu's powers were super OP, right? And then we get the major weakness that the opponent needs to hear his powers in order for them to work. And then Drake also drops the bomb on us that he actually has a secondary weakness, which is not only does the opponent need to hear it, but Apu also needs to aim it with his eyes, right? So now we have two caveats for Apu's power to work, and Apu is very clearly frustrated that he can no longer do anything to anyone on this field, right? At this point, he's slowly relying on the numbers for his muscle. And it's so sad to see that Apu has been reduced to this, but it's also a really nice confirmation that just because you're a supernova captain doesn't mean that um, every other supernova who's not a captain ranks under you, right? We've clearly seen better showings from Zoro and even Killer than, say, Apu and Jewelry Bonnie, even though I think Jewelry Bonnie is another issue entirely. That's a completely separate thing, right? We will get to that whenever Jewelry Bonnie shows up in the story again because I do have a lot to say actually about Jewelry Bonnie. Um, but it's good to see that confirmation, right? And it's great to see how much our characters have grown as well. Um, so then the part that really scares me is the fact that Fuga goes after Yamato, right? Doesn't act on Apu's orders, and that's that's very alarming. That's very alarming because it seems like that theory about the numbers being the samurai who were in the cave with Yamato when Yamato was a child might be true. And I feel like that breaks a lot of what's set up narratively for a ton of reasons, right? Um Shimotsuki Ushimaru seems to be a relative of Zoro. And it's very strange if Yamato takes down a relative of Zoro and Zoro never knows it, right? Um, or that no one ever really knows it aside from her. That's very, very strange. Very, very strange, in my opinion. Um, and it seems that the number Fuga that people link to Shimotsuki Ushimaru, that might be Shimotsuki Ushimaru, that's the one that recognizes her, that's the one that chases after her, right? The others don't, which is strange, right? Because if they did recognize her, you think that they would chase after her too. But that didn't happen. They just sat there. So I still don't believe that the numbers are those samurai because Kaido bought the numbers, right? He bought the numbers 20 years ago, which is exactly how long Yamato was imprisoned um within Onigashima, right? Yamato was put in that cave when she was 8 and she's 28 now. So I still don't think that the timelines really match up for um for Kaido to have bought numbers at the same time, uh caught the escaped samurai and then have them turn into numbers. I feel like it's not something that you could just inject someone with and then watch them turn into numbers, right? Caesar was working on making children large. And that took him years. That took him years and it was something that he had to do with small children. I don't think if full on gigantification of adults that are like, already grown um is a thing that can be done on a whim, right? The best scientists of the world government can't do it. I don't think that Kaido could do it either. You know, Kaido doesn't actually seem to be one for human experimentation, right? He's one for breaking people, but he's not a person who is very science minded, right? Queen is, and we know that Queen is like a top scientist in the world, right? Because he's been on a team with Vegapunk, with Caesar Clown, I would assume, and with Judge. So again, I don't think the numbers are the samurai narratively. I don't think that makes sense, and I don't see how that would fit in with what we've established about Shimotsuki Uchimaru already. And I do find it strange though that Fuga even went after Yamato because as far as we know, Yamato has had free reign of the island, right? She can't leave, but she can move around. People know who she is. We've seen all these grunts go, "Oh, Master Yamato," right? So we've seen them interact with her. They've laid eyeballs on her, And the numbers also seem to get around. So they should know who she is, and she should know who they are, right? So this isn't something that should surprise her either way if Fuga is Shimotsuki Ushimaru, and Fuga shouldn't have this reaction if he's seeing Yamato over and over and over again. This makes it seem like he's seeing her for the first time since he turned, which I don't think is the case. Or maybe it's just a case of just like with Hacha and Frankie, right? He just sees something cool and he's going after it. Maybe these numbers aren't any more intelligent than any of the other numbers, and in fact, so far we haven't seen them be any more intelligent. So, we'll see. We'll see. It seems to be that we're gonna get a fight between dealing with Kazunbo, and then Yamato and Drake and potentially Kinemon um, versus um, Apu and the numbers, right? So we'll see what happens when we get to this basement, but it's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm also really excited to see where this is going, and that's going to wrap up a bunch of plot lines as well. Still no word of Raizo versus Fukurokuju. And I love that the more that this fight keeps getting delayed, the more legendary it seems, right? We're gonna be at Raft Hell by the time this fight gets wrapped up. Um, and it's it's gonna be fantastic. But real quick, we have CP0 versus Brooke and Robin, or not versus, but um it's interesting to see them on the move. It's weird that Robin's down again, right? Because she was standing up just fine last chapter, and now we see that she has to be carried by Brooke. So I guess she's still dealing with injuries. But then I wonder why she was up last chapter, right? Um, but CP0 obviously seems to be making their move. It's clear that they're very strong, not only because Robin says so, but they're just casually talking Minx aside, and I think that it gets forgotten a lot, both by Oda and by the fan base, that Minx are no joke. They are not a joke at all, and they kind of get swept under the rug because we're dealing with such high level characters at this point for the past like 4 or 5 years since Zoe, and we forget that minks are so naturally skilled at combat that mink children can just take on fodder pirates, right? Like easily dispatch fodder pirates. We saw it on Zoe, right? That little baby mink just starts slapping pirates left and right. Um, and that's crazy in and of itself, right? Because we have people like Ace, right, who have been phenomenal fighters, prodigies when it comes to fighting from the time that they're children, right, beating grown men. Um, but even Ace had to team up to beat on fodder like Blue Jam, right? And you could say Blue Jam's not fodder for East Blue, which I guess he's not because he has a bounty, and I'm sure most of those fodder pirates that were on Zoe don't have a bounty. But the fact that um minks who again it's just their natural strength, they're like fishmen, right? It's just their natural aptitude for combat is so high from the time that they're children they can fight fully grown men. So the fact that CP0 is one-handed, that guy is one-handedly tossing minks all over the place, means that they're strong. And then of course we have Robin say that the masked ones, who are the cream of the crop of CP0, who are the cream of the crop of Cypher Pole as an agency, are the strongest of the strongest. That's a big deal, especially because we've seen that um, Rob Lucci, right, back in Dressrosa, I think it's like chapter 801, back in Dressrosa, we see that he does indeed have a mask. So he does count among this number, which means that even if these guys are indeed really, really strong, Lucci is counted among their ranks. And it seems that Lucci is giving a lot of orders. He's giving a lot of orders, right? He gives orders to Kaku, he gives orders to Spondum, right? So that could just be he is the strongest out of the CP9 members, so he gives orders to the CP9 members. But he also seems to give orders to Stussy, who is not a CP9 member, and but she's also never been masked as well. So we don't know where she ranks. I would love to see more of how the ranks of CP0 are set up. I would love if Rob Lucci, after learning about hockey, just kind of shot up the ranks of CP0, just like how he shot up the ranks of CP9. I would love if Lucci is a credible threat again. We're definitely going to get more from him. Maybe during the final war or whenever we get to the point where we're dealing specifically with the world government, but we're going to get something from Rob Lucci, and that's exciting to see. I'm super excited for all the things that are being set up for after the raid is over and beyond Wano. Because a lot of stuff is going on right now, especially in this chapter, that I hope is going to get expounded upon, and I know most of it will get expounded upon, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Like, no doubt. No doubt. Um now now we have Sanji. We have to talk about Sanji. Actually, you know what? No. Before we do, I just want to say one more thing about CP0. Where did the other guy go? In the room with where the bowler hat guy is playing Go, right? There's him, there's the tall guy with the mask that's on a stick and the top hat. And then there's a middle height guy sitting in the corner. And I have no clue where he went. Absolutely no clue where he went. I assume that bowler hat and top hat have gone to deal with Robin, and middle height guy has gone to deal with Who's Who, right? Because as far as we know, Who's Who is still on the fourth floor. He's still unconscious. So again, where did he go? Because he just seemed to disappear. Um, anyway, Sanji. Good Lord, Sanji. This, like the back 7 or 8 pages of this chapter were phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best in One Piece, in my personal opinion. This is the best characterization of Sanji. Post time skip, easy. Easy to say. That is not a hot take at all. Um, most people or a lot of people are talking about, oh, did Sanji hit that girl or not? I don't think it's important whether he hit her or not. That's not what's important. The point right now is that he thinks that he could have, right? Sanji thinks that he could have hit that girl, which is a far cry from the Sanji that we know. In fact, reading the official translation, it almost seems like he blacked out as she was explaining herself, and then he ran into her because the the official translation says that she sailed through the air, and she seems to be quite a bit away from him. So either he hit her and she flew through the air, or he blacked out mid-run, didn't hear anything that she said, ran into her, and then she just got bowled over. And because he, is Sanji and has his exoskeleton now, she got injured. So whether he hit her or not isn't important. It's the fact that he feels now that he has the capacity to do so. And that's super fascinating because we've never had a point in time where Sanji's doubted that he could ever possibly strike a lady. He could never strike a lady according to him. And that's where the real gold lies, right? He has to force himself to come to terms with the fact that he might not be able to uphold his values anymore. The values that were instilled in him by Zeph, and the values that ultimately he puts on himself because of Sora's sacrifice, right? And that's really big. Do you guys understand that? Like, that's super big for Sanji. It's not about, oh, Sanji can hit women now. Thank God, thank God. That's not what I want. It's not that I want Sanji to just run around hitting women, right? But it feels now that he has the capacity to do anything that he needs to do, which was a serious roadblock to him before, right? It's worth noting that we should talk about his eyebrows. Um, his eyebrows. And please stay with me. This is going to be a long segment. I have 2.5 pages of notes on Sanji, where the rest of the chapter altogether took a page and a half. So we're going to be here a while. Um, but it is interesting to note that Sanji's eyebrows, instead of curling from to his right like normal, they now curl to his left like the rest of his family. And I suppose that signifies that the change to his body, his complete germification, if you will, um, is indeed complete. And everything except for the full-on emotional um, blank slate that his brothers are has occurred to him, right? So he has his extreme durability. It seems that he's even stronger now, right? Um, and he's in this strange in between state between being this Germa monster and being the Sanji that we know. And I think that that's a great state for him to be in, at least right now, right? Um, there is this part of Sanji that, whether or not he is going to be okay in the long run, has indeed broken, right? And the it's a lot of it comes in the last like two-ish pages of the chapter, but the Sanji we know pre-time skip never would have busted that raid suit if he got it. Whether it came from Germa or not, he never would have given up the ability to peep on women, right? We get that scene with him and Absalom and how like that's his dream. That's as much of a dream to him as all blue. And he got it. He got it. And in fact, the first thing that he did with the raid suit post fighting page 1 was use it to peep on women's baths. And um even if the suit was making him a monster, he never, ever would have given that up. And that's something that we know, right? He was willing to not be able to swim just to peep on girls. But him destroying the suit makes me think that there's a lot about his treatment of women that's also going to change, right? Because when he breaks the suit, he says farewell to Germa, but he also says farewell to women's baths. And this part, I think, is huge. Absolutely huge. His this personality change gives him a an actual narrative reason, right? To have a clean break with the weirder elements of his character, right? Sanji's super loved by a lot of people, but he has a lot of problematic elements. And I'm not even speaking about it like, oh, it's woke. It's like story altering, story ruining in some cases. Um, Sanji's way of putting women on this pedestal, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, Sanji's a simp. Sanji's such a simp," and he is a simp. He's definitely a simp. And his way of putting women on a pedestal was borderline objectification to the highest degree, like a dangerous degree even. And it's what a lot of people don't like about Sanji, especially post time skip. But he's a liability to the crew despite all of his overwhelming strength, because it's getting to the point where he he needs to be able to do whatever it is he needs to do as a member of the Pirate King's crew. He really does. But at the same time, we also talk about him trusting in his teammates, trusting that Robin will help him, right? Earlier, and that this might negate some of that. But if he can fight women, then he won't need Robin, right? He won't need Nami to come and help him fight the women. But at the same time, this is development that's sorely needed. And you know what? Maybe he won't hit women, but we'll get there as well, right? So, um, yeah, he was a liability to the crew despite his overwhelming strength. And a lot of the time, Sanji was just plain gross. He was just plain gross, right? Sanji as a person boiled women down to objects to be ogled at, fondled, and not really much else. Even when it comes to members of his own crew, right? He just fetishized members of his own crew, and he doesn't take their feelings into consideration a lot of the time, right? Nami clearly does not want Sanji to touch her, and all Sanji does is try to touch her, and that's really weird. And I know it's all played for gags, right? It's all played for humor, but a lot of Sanji is problematic. Um, his idea of a lady extends or extended to essentially every woman, right? Whether he knew them or not. And again, he never actually got to know any of the people around him. He's kind, and I don't think he would ever actually like take advantage of a woman in that way. But the implication of a lot of that gag humor around Sanji and women is like annoying at best and leaves this horrible taste in your mouth at worst. Right, and there are like three big examples that people like to point to. Right, you have the anger at Absalom in Thriller Bark for not being or not for kidnapping Nami and like assaulting Nami and Robin. Um, one of whom was completely naked, by the way, right? Not for doing that. It's for him no longer being able to have the power to do those very same activities himself, right? Which is something that we know that he would do to a degree, right? Because as soon as he got the raid suit, again, what did he do? He went to the women's baths. He did peep on all of the naked women, right? So this is something that he would do. And he wasn't upset with Absalom for taking advantage of that ability. He was upset with Absalom for having the ability because he no longer had that ability for him to take advantage of. That was Sanji's dream, and Absalom ruined it by eating the fruit. Um, there's a bit in the Sabaody auction house where Sanji, in a moment of like pure horniness, actively condones slavery. Right? He says that um when that uh belly dancer is going up for auction, he asks Nami if they can buy her as well as Kami. And it's not out of any sense of righteousness, any sense of oh, we have to get this poor girl out of here. Because he wouldn't do the same for any of the men, right? None of the men. He did that out of pure horniness. And I know that that's also a gag, but like that's an issue. That's an issue. Sanji, in a state of pure lust, was about to partake in slavery. That's crazy. Um, then there is the nosebleed at Fishman Island, right? Um, and that's an action that, for a lot of people, puts Sanji's perverted nature in this permanently bad light. Because not only is it just gross, now it's affecting the story itself, right? Like he was about to die from that nosebleed, and there's an entire segment where Sanji is in critical condition and he has to find blood. He has to find blood. Yes, it helps us learn about Sanji's special blood type and how not a lot of people have it. But at the same time, it it's not a tension building moment because the way that he lost that blood was so absolutely ridiculous, right? So a lot of these more perverted elements not only make people uncomfortable with the character of Sanji in a lot of instances, right? He's easy to like, he's hard to love. Not only does it make a lot of people uncomfortable, but it also undermines Sanji's strength and Sanji's character growth to have him be this way all the time. And again, I'm not saying that he can't like lust after Nami and Robin and be like his weird wobbly like I love women self, but there comes a point where he has to stop treating women like they're objects to be lusted over, like they're just prizes for him to get, and just start treating the women on his crew like people, you know? And I think that this is a great way for Oda to set that up, right? It seems like Oda's growing up when it comes to Sanji as a character. Because at this point, he's just resolved to take down Queen. And he doesn't care. He doesn't seem to care that much whether he hit a girl or not, right? He doesn't seem to care whether his body's changed that much. Or at the very least, his resolve trumps his fears. Because now he seems to be a man of action, his own action, right? Him breaking that suit was him giving up his germicide, but it's also him giving up that perverted nature of his as well. It's him giving his farewell to both parts of him, the part that he hated and the part that the fan base hated as well. And again, that's big. That's big. And before we get to the last few panels, we have to talk about this phone call between Zoro and Sanji, because this phone call is insane for their relationship. Absolutely insane. Because this might just be the first conversation that we've had between the two of them that's about the two of them in the entire series, that didn't revolve around how much they wish the other was dead or lost. Right? In Thriller Bark, we had them discuss in a rather roundabout way how much each of them was willing to die for Luffy, right? Take on his pain. And in that sense, it was like they were telling the other that you're important to lose. And that's the big moment that people point to when they talk about these Zoro Sanji moments, right? That seems to be the most significant Zoro Sanji moment that we have for their relationship is Thriller Bark. And this phone call surpassed that by a mile and a half. For sure. For sure. Right? In this instance, we get an actual conversation, um, which is also potentially the longest conversation that they've actually ever had on screen, right? About their trust in each other. In in Thriller Bark, they're talking about um Luffy. They're not talking about each other. They're like, "Oh, we have to do this for Luffy. This is for Luffy, right? You're too important. I'll take on Luffy's pain and potentially die, right? But ultimately, it's about Luffy, right? And this conversation is about their trust in each other, right? Sanji trusts Zoro to do what needs to be done to make sure Sanji doesn't become a monster to the rest of the crew, right? And Zoro trusts Sanji to make it back to him alive, right? This is Zoro directly acknowledging Sanji's strength, and this is Sanji directly acknowledging Zoro's strength and his trustworthiness, and the fact that they do lean on each other. They do lean on each other, and this is Sanji dropping all pretense that he hates Zoro and just being like, "Listen, man, right? He didn't call Luffy. He didn't call Nami. He didn't call Robin. He called Zoro. Zoro's the person that Sanji trusts the most to do what needs to be done, and that is huge. That is huge, huge, huge. They're directly speaking to each other about each other and how much of a support they are to each other. Right? It's not about the crew, right? The conversation's not about the crew. It's not about Luffy. It's about the two of them. This has to be my favorite personal Zoro slash Sanji interaction, and it's definitely one of my favorite interactions in One Piece. Period. Um, as long as power scaling exists, we're never gonna stop the Zoro versus Sanji hate. But now maybe it can be a little less toxic because the relationship between them is a little less toxic, right? Just a little bit. Maybe the discussion can be just a little bit less toxic. Please, please, please. All right. And the last thing is, even though I said that destroying the raid suit was big for Sanji, the gesture might be mostly symbolic because it seems like he's internalized the abilities of Stealth Black, right? He vanishes before he hits Queen with Hell's Memories, and which, by the way, seems to be powered up. Oh, first of all, it's the first time we've seen Hell's Memories since Fishman Island, right? Since he hit Watatsumi with it. But it also seems to be powered up by the much stronger emotions of his childhood abuse versus the time he spent on in the Kamabaka Kingdom, right? Which again goes to that idea of like full on characterization over gags about women, right? So it seems like he has a stronger version of Hell's Memories based on his childhood memories, which in and of itself is well, peak fiction, right? Um, but when he vanishes, right? There aren't even speed lines to indicate that this was like a speed based feat. Right? We get that black bubble sound effect of the shh, which seems to me I don't know if it's the same as when he vanishes or when Shiryu reappears, right? But Queen seems to think that it's not just speed, right? It's not just speed. Queen asks if this is also due to Judge's interference, right? Judge's science. So it seems that Sanji, just like Niji, can use Henry Needle outside of his raid suit, right? And well, actually, no, we haven't seen Reiju use poison outside of her raid suit. But just like Niji can use Henry Needle, right, his electricity powers outside of his raid suit, it seems that Sanji can now just straight up disappear. Just straight up disappear. Because Queen can't even touch him. Queen can't even touch him, right? And so it really does seem like he has internalized Stealth Black's cloaking ability, and it's so strange that Queen can't even touch him because at this point Queen has gone hybrid, used weapons that have just shattered on impact without Sanji even using hockey, right? Queen's used lasers. He's used his brachio bombers. He's used his snake form that crushes apparently armament hockey masters, and Sanji's countered all of that all of that. As far as I can remember, Sanji's always had a pretty easy time in fights in comparison to Zoro and Luffy, right? Like they're always messed up, and Zoro especially was just covered in blood. He's always covered in wounds. But Sanji usually takes like a knock to the head and a stab. Like the worst it ever got was when Absalom just kind of like just gored him with that knife. Um, but even then, he just pulled it out and he ended up being fine ultimately, right? Because they all went on to fight Oars and he seemed fine. um but this it's weird because this should be the hardest fight in the entirety of the series for Sanji, and Queen cannot seem to hurt him anymore. He just can't. And obviously the real fight for Sanji is the fight within himself. So it's fine that he's not getting like this super taxing fight where he has to take all of his energy to beat Queen, right? Because the real struggle of Sanji this chapter is the fight within. And um obviously, like if if it was between a high diff Queen fight and the quality characterization that we got this chapter, I'm picking the characterization every single time, hands down, hands down. This is the best possible outcome, right? Um, because like Sanji fans are eating good this week. Sanji fans are eating good. I mean, breakfast, lunch, and dinner cooked by the man himself, cooked by the master chef himself, because this has been absolute quality. This is the peak fiction, honestly, genuinely. In the span of well, all right. Well, first of all, I am interested to see how this fight will wrap up. Um, but thematically, it seems like nothing else can happen with Sanji until after the fight, right? And Queen isn't a threat to Sanji anymore. He's just not. Again, this seems to be the easiest time he's had in a fight in the entirety of the series, and like a major fight. And I since he can't hurt him, and the characterization of Sanji that we've been getting can't continue until the fight is over, I think Queen is done. I think the fight's over. Like next chapter, maybe. Right? If we continue with this Sanji greatness. Or at the very least the next time we see them, it's over. And um, I do like that in the span of like 4 chapters, right? Sanji's gotten this massive power up, which was a sorely needed one too. Um, and the single best characterization, I would say, it's a hot take. It's a hot take, but it might not even be that hot. This might be the single best characterization in all of One Piece. All of One Piece. I'm probably gonna stick by that. Um, like I know that might be crazy to say, right? But in chapter 1028 and in chapter 1031, uh those chapters took all the slow buildup and lack of true action on Sanji's part in Whole Cake Island and gave us context for this amazing piece of character work that um honestly makes these chapters make Whole Cake Island retroactively a masterpiece of character exploration, right? Just because of these chapters alone, Whole Cake Island has shot up to be some of the single best character work in the entirety of One Piece, which automatically puts it as one of the best arcs, right? We got one of the best fights in all of One Piece, if not possibly the best fight in all of One Piece in Whole Cake, and then we also got the best character work. We have Big Mom being Big Mom, getting one of the best backstories that we've ever gotten. Sanji getting the best character work, and then Luffy getting the best fight. And this also highlights like a bigger problem with One Piece, right? We're reading week to week. The arcs seem like they are completely mid and that they don't hit, but over time we end up retroactively appreciating everything about it. And Whole Cake is Dressrosa is one of those arcs. Whole Cake is one of those arcs. If you haven't, I implore you to read those arcs again from start to finish because the pacing's completely fine. The pacing's completely fine, and the arcs themselves are fantastic. So please, if you haven't, go read those. But I think that Wano is also going to be one of those arcs. In fact, I also think it might be the best example out of these 3 arcs, right? Because at this point, even I'm hoping that Wano ends. I'm hoping that Wano ends soon, and I think it will. I really think it will now. I feel like that's not in debate, but or at the very least, the raid will end soon, right? But um, even reading it week to week, I know that this is going to hit different. Reading it all at once, it's going to, and it's going to be good. It's really going to be good. Because all the slow pacing now turns into expert pacing when you can read it all at once. And but I'm getting off topic. I'm getting off topic. Um, in any case, um, again, yeah, I do think that this is some of the best character work in the entirety of One Piece. Um, because Luffy's always been Luffy, right? And even though we got more of his past and a lot more characterization about how he would feel about Ace's death, um, we got that after Ace's death. We got that after Ace's death, so we couldn't really feel that much in the moment. I'm one of those people who didn't actually care that much about Ace's death. I know Luffy cared about it, so I cared about it, but I didn't have a stake in it personally until after he died, right? Until after we got that post-war pre-time skip flashback. And when it comes to Robin, Robin got to learn what it was like to trust people, and we got to see her open up, and we got to see what the real Robin was like for the first time, right? But this is the first time that One Piece has tackled the in my opinion the far deeper question of what do you do when you can no longer be the you that everyone expects of you, including yourself, right? I'm looking forward to see where this goes, and even if he just goes back to being a pervert all the time, but obviously, hopefully, without the really creepy parts, that's fine because now we have context for that behavior on a level that we never could have imagined, right? That would be his choice to act the way that he wants to, and not Judge's, not Zeph's, and not Sora's, right? This is Sanji choosing his own path, right? He even says himself, I'm going my own way. So this is Sanji choosing his path for himself, and whether that's a mixture of his new Germa temperament and his old ways, I hope it's the case. I really hope it's the case. But even if he goes back to being regular Sanji, we know that that's his decision. And that in and of itself counts for so much. Counts so much for Sanji's character. And I can't wait to see how this develops. This has been one of the best chapters in Wano. Um and possibly the best chapter we've ever got that is focused around Sanji. In fact, it probably is the best chapter we've ever gotten that's focused around Sanji. Um just the characterization alone makes me feel like this is the one of the best chapters in One Piece. Just period. Just period. It's not the grand like lore thing. In fact, it is the most opposite from grand world building that we've seen. It is this tiny element focused on a single person inside of a single person. But it's because of that, right? It's because this is the most depth we've gotten out of any character in One Piece that puts it in my top 5 chapters in One Piece for sure, for sure. This has been amazing. It's been amazing, and I'm not saying that as a Sanji fan, right? I really hope we get something from Zoro too. Probably not because Zoro's like a different beast from Sanji, but I I hope we get something, something, even if it's just Zoro acknowledging that he's not at the level that he needs to be yet, right? Because that's usually how Zoro's character development tends to go. But I'm just rambling now, and I hope that this development continues in the future. I really do because it's great. It's great. Um, anyway, that's the chapter. If you liked it, if you got this far, I know it's long. I know it's long. I'm so sorry, but there was so much. There was so much to talk about, especially when it comes to Sanji. Um, in fact, I talked about Sanji so much that I might not even do a Sanji video. I might not even do one, um, just because like so much came out in this video. So I might not do a Sanji video, but I still will probably do a Big Mom video. Because I have a lot to say about Big Mom still. So if you liked it, if you liked the video, make sure you rate, comment, subscribe, hit that bell, right, to get more videos because more videos are coming. I love doing these videos. I have so much fun doing these videos. And please share it with your friends, right? I would love to get some discussion going, talk about it with everybody because One Piece is great, and we all love One Piece. And I just want to be able to get to the point where I can talk to people about it and just talk with you guys and have fun. I love you guys. If you made it this far, I really love you. Thank you very much. Thank you so so much. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Alrighty, peace.